There's a certain kind of silence that hits when you realize what could have been but never was. The kind that creeps in when you rewatch The Force Awakens and remember the electricity the first time Finn held that lightsaber. It wasn't just cool or unexpected. It felt meaningful, like the universe was cracking open to make room for someone new. We didn't need it explained because we felt it deep in our bones. But instead of building on that promise, the story shifted. Choices were made that pushed him further into the background, made him smaller, quieter, less vital. As if his journey was only meant to start the engine but never be allowed to drive. And somehow, the fire we all saw in him was smothered before it even had the chance to burn. There's heartbreak in wasted potential, especially when the character had everything going for him. He had courage, instincts, defiance, and most importantly, he had heart. Finn could have shattered expectations, changed the trajectory of the entire franchise, and given Star Wars a soul it didn't know it needed. Instead, they gave him a hollow arc wrapped in what-ifs, and yet the audience didn't forget. We saw it, we still see it, and the conversations have only gotten louder with time. It's not about being angry just for the sake of it. It's about mourning what we lost, and what we were never given the chance to witness. Because when a story holds back a character that mattered to so many people, don't move on quietly. In this video, we're diving into why we got robbed of Finn becoming a Jedi, how the films built him up, only to abandon that path, and what it could have meant if they let his story unfold the way it deserved to. We'll explore the emotional weight of that missed opportunity, the cultural significance it carried, and why fans continue to speak out, even years later. Finn wasn't just another character, he was a spark the galaxy ignored, and it's time we talk about it. There was a moment in The Force Awakens where Finn holds a lightsaber, and we all felt something shift inside us. He wasn't just a stormtrooper gone rogue or comic relief, meant to fumble his way through danger. He stood toe-to-toe with a trained warrior, and didn't blink once. There was something raw and magnetic about that scene that hinted at untapped potential. The way he wielded that weapon wasn't a mistake, and it didn't feel random at all. The film planted just enough seeds to make us believe that maybe the Force had chosen someone new, someone unexpected and powerful, who had spent his life buried in servitude only to rise above it. We didn't need exposition because the feeling was enough. Finn didn't just stand with the resistance, he stood with heart and defiance. That moment with the lightsaber wasn't about skill, it was about calling. You could see it in his eyes, and the weight of the moment didn't need words to explain it. That was the spark we all thought would catch fire, and yet, somehow, they let it go cold, as if it never mattered in the first place, as if his moment of courage was just a passing beat with no consequences. But we felt it, and you can't fake that kind of energy. We got robbed of what could have been a revolutionary arc. From the moment Finn defected, he became one of the most original characters Star Wars had introduced in decades. A stormtrooper who rejected blind obedience and found purpose through compassion. That alone could have led to one of the most layered journeys in the franchise. But instead, he was pushed to the sidelines every time something meaningful began. It's not just about him holding a saber, it's about what that symbolized. That a nobody taken as a child and stripped of identity could become something greater. That the Force wasn't reserved for bloodlines or chosen ones, but for anyone with the courage to act. Finn represented a shift the series desperately needed. And it's not like audiences weren't responding. The fan theories were everywhere. The excitement was genuine. The curiosity kept growing. We weren't just imagining the possibilities, we were rooting for them. There was momentum behind his character that should have been embraced, not erased. But the sequels didn't trust the story they had. They teased a rise only to walk it back with every new installment. By the time the trilogy ended, the message was clear, intentional or not. His story was never going to be given the same weight, and that loss still stings. What makes this even more frustrating is how many opportunities were handed to the filmmakers on a silver platter. Finn's connection to the Force was all but confirmed through subtle moments and unexplored dialogue. The way he sensed danger, the way he felt people's presence, the way he acted on instinct alone. He was constantly being guided by something he didn't understand, but never questioned. His choices weren't luck, they were deliberate, they were emotional, they were intuitive. There were dozens of chances to explore that growth and allow him to discover his potential naturally. Instead, they kept pulling him away from the spotlight. Even when he tries to confess something important to Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, it's quickly brushed aside. Later, it's revealed that he might be Force-sensitive, but the moment has no impact. No weight, no closure, no follow-up. It was handled like an afterthought, not a revelation. And that's the tragedy here. The Force was calling to him the entire time, and nobody in the story truly listened. Not the characters, not the writers, not the galaxy around him. And we, the audience, were forced to watch that silence drown out something powerful. Imagine what it would have meant for kids around the world to see a black Jedi rise from the ashes of the Empire's cruelty. Not born into privilege, not trained in secret, not selected by fate. Just someone who broke free and chose his own path. That kind of story could have changed the shape of the franchise. Representation matters, but it's more than just casting. It's about allowing the character to grow, to evolve, to lead. Finn had the setup, the heart, the audience, and the perfect entry point. He had the soul of a Jedi, long before anyone admitted it out loud. Instead, he became a background player in his own saga, reduced to comedic relief or side missions that meant nothing in the end. That's not how you treat someone who stood on the edge of destiny. That's not how you honor the arc that was promised in the beginning. And still, we wonder what could have been. What might have happened if they let him become who he was always meant to be. We'll never know what scenes were left on the cutting room floor, what rewrites buried his potential. But we do know what we saw, and we haven't forgotten. You can't look at Finn's story without feeling the weight of what was lost. He was on the verge of greatness, and the path was right in front of him. The Force was never about perfection. It was about balance, growth, and belief. Finn embodied all of that without ever needing to say the words. He could have trained with Rey, struggled with visions, learned through failure, and still become something extraordinary. His flaws were never a weakness. They were his humanity. And humanity is what Star Wars has always needed more of. Not just power, but purpose. By holding him back, they didn't just weaken his story, they weakened the entire trilogy. The dynamic between him and Rey could have been something deeper, more complex. Two people rising together in completely different ways, both shaped by trauma and hope. That balance was never fully realized. And now, we're left with a character who had everything he needed except permission. Permission to lead, to grow, to connect with the Force in his own way. That silence speaks volumes, and it echoes louder every time we rewatch those early scenes. Finn deserved better, not just as a character, but as a symbol of what Star Wars could have evolved into. He was the heart of a new kind of story, one built on defiance, redemption, and inner strength. The choice to ignore that potential wasn't just disappointing. It was a disservice to everything the galaxy far, far away once stood for. His arc had the power to inspire a new generation of fans who saw themselves in him. Not just through the color of his skin, but through the courage in his actions. That feeling of being overlooked, underestimated, and still pushing forward. That was Finn's Jedi journey, even if it never got the title. We may never get the trilogy that lets Finn step into the role he earned, but the impact of what he represented still lingers. Fans continue to imagine the story that should have been, to honor the character they believed in. Because stories don't die when the credits roll. They live on in those who carry them forward. So maybe one day, the galaxy will remember who Finn really was. Not a background player, not comic relief, but a force all his own. And when that happens, it won't be a redemption arc, it'll be a restoration. A reminder that no one's destiny should be silenced before it's spoken.